August 25, 1944, Cherbourg Harbor, Normandy, France. Sergeant William Henderson wiped the sweat and grease from his hands, staring at the endless line of trucks forming along the harbor roads. 6,000 vehicles, olive drab, dust-caked, stamped with 3 letters, GMC. To some, it meant General Motors Corporation. But to the thousands of men preparing to climb into those trucks, most of them African American, it meant something far greater. It meant hope. It meant survival. It meant the difference between the Allied armies racing toward Germany and an advance grinding to a halt for lack of fuel and food. Those trucks, dismissed years earlier as underpowered and obsolete, were about to prove themselves more valuable than tanks or planes. They would become the backbone of one of the greatest logistical operations in history, the Red Ball Express. The story of this miracle begins not on the battlefields of France, but in the design rooms of General Motors in 1939. The U.S. Army needed a new medium tactical truck, a 212-ton hauler that could traverse mud, snow, and battle-torn terrain. What emerged was the GMC ACKWX 353, an early prototype with a modest 77-horsepower engine and 6-wheel drive. It was functional but far from ideal. When France ordered 1,000 of these trucks, they seemed satisfied, until the German Blitzkrieg shattered Europe in 1940. Most of those vehicles ended up in German hands, ironically serving the Wehrmacht on the Eastern Front. The British, who received some as part of emergency contracts, tested them and declared them failures. Too long, too weak, too clumsy for European roads. The verdict was damning. The design, they said, was unsuitable for modern warfare. But American engineers didn't give up. They reworked the design from the ground up, increasing power to 104 horsepower with a new 270 cubic-inch inline-6 engine, refining the frame and offering 2 wheelbase options. This new model, designated CCKW, would become one of the most iconic truck off the line every 7 minutes, 24 hours a day. Between 1941 and 1945, over 500,000 of these vehicles would be built, more than the combined truck production of Germany, Britain, and the Soviet Union. They would haul everything from fuel and ammunition to medical supplies, bridging equipment, and even mobile workshops. Each variant was a piece of America's industrial miracle, all sharing one vital heart: the GMC 270 engine that would carry the Allies across Europe. Gathered in emergency session. June 1940. Their solution was as bold as it was desperate: a non-stop highway convoy system, an express road of war. 2 routes would stretch from the ports to the front, one for loaded trucks, one for the return. Every other vehicle would be banned. Military police would control intersections. The roads would never stop moving. The operation would be called the Red Ball Express, named after railroad Red Balls, priority freight that always had the right-of-way. Now came the hard part: the trucks and the drivers. They stripped vehicles from every unit that could spare one: artillery, engineers, medical companies. In all, 6,000 trucks, mostly GMC CCKWs, were assembled. But most of the men who would drive them were not frontline heroes. They were African American soldiers, men the Army had segregated into service units, barred from combat under the false belief that they lacked courage or intelligence. Yet when the call came, these men stepped forward. 17,000 African American drivers, joined by about 3,000 white soldiers, would form the beating heart of the Red Ball Express. Most were under 25, some barely trained, many driving heavy trucks for the first time. They worked in shifts that stretched for 54 hours straight. They called themselves the Truckin' Soldiers. The name stuck. At 5 a.m. August 25th, the first convoys rolled out. Red balls painted on signs and truck hoods marked the dedicated routes: northbound for loaded trucks, southbound for empties. Drivers tore through bomb-cratered roads, bridges held up by temporary girders, and villages still smoking from battle. They drove by night under blackout conditions, guided by the faint glow of cat-eye lights. Two dim slits no brighter than cigarette embers. Many removed their engine governors, pushing their trucks past 60 miles an hour, praying the brakes would hold. Accidents were constant. Fatigue was worse. Men fell asleep at the wheel. Trucks jackknifed, rolled, burned. Yet they kept going. Through rain, mud, enemy fire, and exhaustion that blurred the world into motion and noise. The CCKW became their companion and savior. Mechanics kept them alive with scavenged parts and improvised repairs. Belts cut from tent canvas, gaskets made from shoe leather, engines wired together with scrap metal. The trucks groaned, smoked, and clattered. But they rolled. One driver said, "The Jimmy could take anything you threw at it. It just wanted to live." Within days, the results were staggering. On August 29, 1944, 100 meter, 32 iconic trucks of the war. Its name was Pure Code, C for 1941 design, C for conventional cab, K for all-wheel drive, U for dual rear axles, but its meaning would soon be written in blood, sweat, and dust. The CCKW, known to soldiers as the Jimmy or Deuce and a Half, wasn't built for glory. It wasn't fast, it wasn't glamorous, but it was indestructible. Its simple, rugged design allowed it to be built by semi-skilled workers in vast numbers. At peak production, General Motors rolled a completed truck off the line. Truck companies operating nearly 6,000 vehicles delivered over 12,000 tons of supplies in a single day, more than planners believed possible. Over 82 days, the Red Ball Express hauled 412,000 tons of cargo, fuel, food, ammo, across nearly 400 miles of wrecked French countryside. The convoys became lifelines, feeding the Allied advance that would liberate Paris and push toward the Rhine. Patton's tanks kept rolling because those men behind the wheels refused to stop. June 1944. D-Day, over 150,000 Allied troops stormed the beaches of Normandy. The landings succeeded, but soon victory brought its own problem: logistics. By mid-July, more than 1 million Allied soldiers were crammed into a pocket of hedgerows and cratered roads, burning through supplies faster than they could be delivered. Then came Operation Cobra, the breakout. Patton's Third Army exploded across France, advancing 50, 60, even 80 miles a day. But tanks don't run on courage to stop. But behind the success lay constant tension. Segregation followed the drivers everywhere. Separate mess halls, separate units, separate discipline. Yet, when German bombs fell or trucks broke down in the dark, race mattered less than survival. Many white soldiers came to respect their black counterparts, knowing they owed their lives to those who kept the gas coming. General Eisenhower himself issued a message of gratitude. "To you, drivers and mechanics who keep the red ball moving, you are doing an excellent job." That praise, rare in the segregated army of 1944, meant everything. By November, the operation finally wound down. Antwerp's port reopened, pipelines stretched across France, and repaired railways took over. The Red Ball Express officially ended on November 16, 1944, after 82 relentless days. Yet its legacy didn't stop. When the Germans launched their last great offensive, the Battle of the Bulge, the same trucks and drivers returned to the roads under new names and courage. Every Sherman needed 150 gallons of gasoline for just 100 miles. The faster Patton moved, the faster he ran dry. Within weeks, American spearheads were hundreds of miles from the Normandy ports. The railroads had been bombed to pieces before D-Day. The artificial harbors, mulberries, had been destroyed by storms. The Allies faced the unthinkable. Their armies could win battles, but lose the war for lack of fuel. On August 21, 1944, Allied logistics officers gathered in emergency the Little Red Ball, the White Ball Express. In snow and ice, with frozen engines and numb hands, they drove through blizzards to keep the front alive. Many never got medals, few were remembered. But without them, the Allied armies would have starved in the cold. In total, over 23,000 men kept the Red Ball Express running, 75% of them African American. They drove 6,000 trucks through hell and back, delivering the supplies that won the war. And at the center of it all was the GMC CCKW, a machine once dismissed as a failure, now immortalized as the truck that won the war. General Patton said it best. The 212-ton truck is our most valuable weapon. Not the tank, not the airplane, the truck. Because in war, victory isn't only decided by who fights hardest, but by who keeps moving.